Do you love soft, buttery, delicious homemade rolls? Well, in this video, I'm about to rock your socks because we're not only making homemade rolls, the best you've ever had in your life, but we're going to be using freshly milled wheat using Kamut. Oh yeah, it's gonna be amazing. You won't even know that this is actually made from whole wheat flour because I promise you it looks and tastes like, and almost tastes like you used white flour, but yet astronomically better. Hey y'all, welcome back to Grains and Grit. My name is Felicia, and on this channel we talk all things real whole grains from a biblical perspective. I teach you how to mill your own wheat, bake from scratch, and whatever else pops in my brain. So if that is your jam, then be sure to subscribe to this channel and like this video. So this is actually part 2 of the video from last week where I introduced y'all to Kamut, which is an ancient grain and our grain that we are exploring for the month of June for our Grains Explorer Challenge. To know more about that, watch that video, and also check out grainsandgrit.com/grainsexplorer to check out this challenge. So in this video, I'm going to be showing y'all, breaking it down of how I make the best rolls of your life, because this is rolls made with Kamut. And the reason why I wanted to do an extra video is because Kamut, when you mill it fresh at home, is just a trickier wheat to use. So if you've tried this recipe, please let me know in the comments below. Also, the printable recipe will be available for y'all in the comments below as well. So I've already showed y'all how I make rolls with just regular like hard red or hard white wheat. I will list that up here for y'all below and link it down below as well. But this video, it's actually going to be the same recipe. We're just switching out the grain to Kamut. So if you're already familiar with my roll recipe, it's just my simple yeast bread loaf recipe, then this is going to be a bit easier for you, but just pay attention to what we're looking for in the dough, because that's where it can go wrong really bad. So without further ado, let's get into this. Okay, so here's what you're gonna need for this recipe. Of course, you need a grain mill, some way to grind up your grains. This is Miss Wanda. She is my Wonder Mill, Impact Mill. And then I do recommend a mixer because of the tacky and stickiness of this grain. If you don't have one, you can do it by hand, but it's going to be longer. And I do recommend watching my video about how to knead by hand because it's really going to come in handy for this video. Okay, so you have your wheat berries. You're going to need about 6 to 7 cups of Kamut or Corazon wheat berries, and that's going to mill to about 9 to 10 cups of flour. You're probably going to need around 9 to 9.5 cups plus a little bit more for dusting. Okay, so besides the flour, you're also going to need 3 3/4 cups of warm water, 2 1/4 tablespoons, yes, tablespoons of yeast. I do prefer instant yeast. You need 1/2 cup of honey, 1/2 cup of oil, and then 3 1/4 teaspoons of salt. And then you also just need like 9 by 13 dishes to shape the rolls in. So I'm going to get my wheat going. We're then going to do a little bit of a soak with the yeast, the flour, some of the flour and the water like I typically do. And we're going to get this going, and then I'll slow it down whenever it's the important part to start slowing it down. All right, we have our wheat berries milled. You also need an apron because flour gets everywhere. But to this, we're going to add 3 3/4 cups of warm water, our 2 1/4 tablespoon of instant yeast, and then we're just going to be adding 2 cups of our freshly milled Kamut flour. Mix this all together. All right, so, and then we're just going to let this sit for around 15 to 20 minutes. If you have a colder house, maybe 20 minutes. You may also be able to do 10 minutes. Bottom line, all we're doing is just we're waiting for this to get nice and bubbly. If you are using active yeast, do not skip this step because your active yeast does need to be activated. If you're using instant yeast, it is possible that you can skip this step, but I tend to not because I find that my bread loaves just tend out to be a bit softer when I include this step. All right, and now we walk away and gather our other ingredients that we're gonna need. And I'll see you back here in about 15 minutes. Less than that, thanks to the power of editing. So it's been 15 minutes. It's looking great. We're going to move this camera around to give you all a closer view. All right, so at this point, it is nice and bubbly. It is risen a little bit. That tells us our yeast is good. That is what we want. So we're adding in 1/2 cup of oil, 1/2 cup of honey. Yes, they can be measured together. And then our salt. Okay, so remember, we already added 2 cups of our Kamut flour in here. The recipe calls for 9 to 9.5 cups. Do not just dump all that in, okay? Don't ever do that. I'm gonna add up to a total of 8 cups, which is less than what I need, because then we're gonna go from there. So we already have 2 in, 3, 4, 8. The reason I do this is we can always add flour, we can't take away. And the exact amount of flour that you need will vary based on where you live, if it's humid, if it's cold, if it's hot. So that's why you don't just dump it in. This is not all-purpose flour. You can't just treat it the same no matter where you are. It's gonna be a little different based on where you live. So we add a lid and mix this up. Okay, so that is starting to mix up well. I want it to be mixed up a bit further than that. And then we're gonna start adding in flour, probably about a 1/4 cup at a time until it just starts to pull away from the sides of the bowl. And I'll go ahead and tell you that this kind of is gonna be a bit more of a gut instinct based on your experience. Because again, Kamut is a bit stretchier and sticky of a flour, but I'm gonna point it out to you as best as I can. But this is where you're gonna be tempted to add too much flour, therefore not getting it super soft rolls. Pause it here. You do want to, when you add in flour, wait for it to completely incorporate in before you decide to add more flour. It's going to take a few seconds for it to really get in. So it may start to pull away from the sides of the bowl and then not. So that's why you need to wait for a little bit. Okay, so if you notice it was starting to pull off the sides of the bowl and then go back, that's kind of where I wanted, but now it's even more coming off a bit more. And when it starts doing that, I'm gonna point it out a bit more. When it starts doing that, that's when you start your knead time. We're gonna knead it for 9 minutes. But yeah, that is looking good here. And we're gonna start timing it for 9 minutes. And just so you know that on the Bosch Universal Mixer, I have this on the 1 setting. If I was doing this in the Nutrimel Artiste, it would probably be around 3 or 4, the level 3 or 4. If you're in there on Oscrum, I have no idea. I have no experience with your mixer. I apologize. But we're going to keep this going, and I'll see you back here after the kneading time is done. Okay, so that is 9 minutes of kneading, and this feels, oh, it is the softest dough. I have to say, y'all, like something about dough with Kamut is just so nice to deal with. But as you can see, it is quite very, very stretchy. Kamut is very, very stretchy when we do this. And that is what we're looking for. But as you can see, I mean, that is quite a stretch there. But it's also pretty sticky. Okay. You're going to have some come off your hand. That's what you want. If you add more flour at this point, because you think, oh, this is too sticky, it's going to be too dense. That's the thing with Kamut, is it ends up in this very, 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 very stretchy dough. And for the most part, it's going to come off your fingers, but you're going to have some left. And I'll show you how to deal with that in a bit, but that's what we want. That's the perfect dough right there. It is beautiful. It is smooth. It is shiny, and it feels pillowy and soft. Again, you're going to be surprised that this is freshly milled wheat. You would never know if you didn't know already. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're then from here going to shape these into the rolls that I need. All right, so usually I will just leave it in here, but I wanted to give y'all a better idea exactly what this dough looks like. So when I say it's sticky, it's not like a typical no-knead bread. I mean, the gluten has been developed, but it's just, if you've been doing a normal yeast bread with like the hard red or hard white wheat, this is going to feel very, very different. All right, but it should all come out for the most part in one big glob here. Again, this is why we have bench scrapers here to help you get it off. So I did flour my surface a bit, okay? Again, this is why I say it's tricky, because you're gonna be tempted thinking you may need more flour. Okay, so I have my 9x13s here. These are greased, and all I wanna do now is start shaping my rolls, which is, if you've seen my rolls video, it's the same, except this will be very important to flour your hands. You can use just put some water on, but I find doing the flour, now I'm not coating it with flour. All that I'm doing is basically I just pick up some flour in my hand and then I drop it. Kind of do that. So it's just lightly floured, and then I just pull off a piece that I want. And then how we roll it, now eventually I can do two, but it's kind of that shaping motion where you're tucking under on the inside. So tuck under with your thumb, roll, tuck under with your thumb. Eventually you can do it like this. So you can see it's kind of tucked under there, and you're looking for it smooth on top. This will be the most uniformly consistent rolls. And if you want them smaller than that, this is a little above the shape of a golf ball, a little bit bigger of a size. You can do smaller, you can do bigger, depends on what you want. But we're gonna take that, that looks good, and on my 13, and we're gonna keep on going. So again, when it starts to stick so much where you just can't do anything, just put flour in your hands again. And do know, if it comes out like this, you know, if it's starting to do that when you let go of it, that's fine. This actually is fairly forgiving, and they're gonna rise where they come together anyway. And for those of you who are part of my Grainy Bunch, be sure to look in the member portal, because soon there will be a video where I show you how to make sliders with this, and they are so good. All right, so usually I can get two, and then I gotta reflour my hands. Okay, so do that. And if you want them perfect in size, feel free to weigh them all to make sure they're about the same weight. I do not have the time to do that usually. And fun fact, the reason I'm filming this today is because I have to make 100 of these. One of our friends' daughter is graduating high school, and I was asked to make the rolls for her graduation party. So shout out to Haley. Congratulations, sweetheart. You know I love you, and you are awesome, and I'm so proud of you. She graduated salutatorian of her class and gave an amazing speech at graduation. Really gave an awesome gospel presentation as well that I thought she absolutely nailed it. Okay, so she deserves these rolls. So depending on the size that you are making these, this is 15 that I'm able to fit in a 9 by 15. So if I was to make these bigger, but bottom line, if I was to make these bigger, it would probably be about a dozen. You can do it in a smaller container than this. That's totally fine, or even bigger. But the bottom line is this is how I like it, because they're going to come together. It also makes it easier for making sliders that way. But think about like the Hawaiian rolls you buy from the store where they're together and you pull apart. That's what we're making. So this is perfect. You can see that some of them have, you know, not the perfectly smooth on top. That's okay. It usually works itself out. So don't be obsessed with absolute perfection. So this we set aside. I like to put them on top of my oven while my oven is preheating to 350 degrees. These get baked for 25 minutes, but we're going to let them rise. Usually they need to rise 15, 20 minutes. I'm going to show you what it looks like when they have risen, because they're going to look like they're flat, which is why we want them close together, because it helps them rise up when baking. But otherwise, I'm going to set this aside and keep going with the rolls. Oh, one little random one here. So let's see, we're gonna kind of mush it into here and it'll be fine. It'll be fine. It's still edible. It'll be fine. Don't worry about it. Okay, so here we are. I've got 37 rolls from this batch. Again, it may vary, give or take a little, depending on how big or small you made your rolls. And here I've got my oven preheating to 350 degrees. I'm gonna cover this up and let them rise. I'm gonna check on them in about 15 minutes to see how they are. And I'll see you back here when they're ready to be put in the oven. All right, so it's been almost 10 minutes. And unfortunately, this is something you probably won't be able to see on video, but these have risen very beautifully, very nicely. And I would say, I mean, you can tell, I mean, they're not the doughs, they're looking like rolls, and they have risen up as well. They're gonna rise even more in the oven. And so now we're gonna put them in preheated 350 degree oven for 25 minutes. Until they get like a bit of a light golden brown on top. And then we also have the option of melted butter, buttering the tops on that. So let's get these in the oven. Gonna have to go down here. All right, here's the batch right here, but I do actually prefer it to be a little bit more brown on the top. So what I'm gonna do is add some butter and then move my rack up to the top. Ta-da. All right, and from here, you can allow it to cool for just a little bit in the pan and then remove, or you can go ahead and remove it. Trust me, it's hot. And let me show you what these bad boys look like on the inside. So here they are. Again, the beauty of these is you can have them hot, and these are quite hot, but they are super soft. You can keep them in the oven a bit longer to brown a bit more, but we're just going to go in and open them up, steaming hot, slather up with some butter, and it is absolutely delicious. So you can serve them like this, pull them apart, put them in a bowl, serve it with some butter, whatever it is that y'all like to do. So again, remember, printable recipe is in the description box below, so y'all can find this and let me know if you have made these rolls. Be sure to tag me if you do. And if you haven't already been catching up with the Grains Explorer Challenge, then be sure to watch the playlist to catch up what you've missed so far. Have a great day.